application that is AI, that is already ChatGPT. Maybe these people, they never even use it. They don't know what it is, but they're going to throw out all sort of argument out there.
We had a lot of movies that kept feeding us, this information that AI would be dangerous in. And there are real dangers, but believe me, it's not the ones that we have in our head. It's not about losing your skills. It's not about being less valuable. It's not about not needing to get more skills. It's more about being aware of why you need to move fast and before everybody else beats you there.
Humanity is still in an infant stage, because here we still kill each other because you have the color of your skin is different from me.
Okinawa, Japan, 1980. I'd only been there for 4 or 5 months. I'm 3 going on 4. My parents are very, very trusting because we live on a military base with letting me just be outside. And I remember going to the backyard of the barracks building, and we had this really tall, winding hill that you could, go up and run down as a kid, tumble down. So a lot of the kids would congregate out behind this hill and play together. I took this time to collect bugs.
If you were to go back to Japan today, what would you be looking for? What you say?
My name is Dennis Day. I'm an Air Force kid. I grew up with my father in the military. So I had a great journey all around the world at a young age where, being from the American culture, a lot of Americans don't know what it's like out there. They're here in America and they don't get to see Japan. They don't get to see Germany. They don't get to see the Philippines. They don't get to see many of the states that we have here in America. So I've lived all over this world. I think Japan was my favorite place growing up. That's where I kind of started my computer career. My father put a Commodore 64 in front of me at a very early age. So when your fingers are really small, you type one finger at a time, right? But I learned how to load my floppy disks into my computer and play my little video games. And that was a great start to how, my journey would continue for the rest of my life. But we leave Japan to move to many of the other places I named. And during that whole time, we were blessed to be on a military base. So we had computer labs in school. So in my first grade class, I had a computer lab. My second grade class, I had a computer lab. And, all of this stuff is happening in that revolution of the PC. During that time of the world where the PC was still kind of brand new, but people were really, saying this was going to revolutionize humanity. So, I've lived through that beautiful changing of the old way of doing things from being on a typewriter to, going to the blue screen of death with Windows, to then learning what Mac really was and why Macintosh was better. In many ways, and in fact, it's funny, I'll pause a second and say Macintosh was in schools before they took it out of schools to replace them with Windows machines. So I can take you to like the 8th grade, in the 8th grade, we finally are in the States, and I'm living in New Jersey. And I remember the kids in New Jersey were very, very more streetwise than I was. I'll say that much. But we were still all military kids, and we go to computer labs, and a lot of my friends were showing me a lot of the secret stuff that I hadn't learned that they had learned from street hustling on computers. So I got a very in-depth view of how computers were really about to change the world.
So there is a lot going on with the computer now. So today, what do you do, Dennis? Tell me, walk me around what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Okay, so on a day-to-day basis now, I'm an engineer slash computer developer. So I've had to take the title called a Chief AI Officer because I know how to engineer AI systems and I know how to manage these AI systems and really define them, give them a purpose, breadth, life, and integrity. So on a day-to-day basis, I'm building different softwares, SaaS, software as a service, or websites or consultations for organizations that may have a need to fill a gap in their business models. And with AI's help, I'm showing them that where we used to spend 2 to 3 weeks doing a project and being very detailed about it, we can still keep the same amount of detail and integrity in about 5 to 6 hours. And it is blowing everybody's mind because look at what they just saved in money. Look at what I just kind of saved in time and effort. So that's kind of where I'm at now is re-educating the youth that this is their next skill set to pick up, and keeping the old people and people my age actually up to date with what changes every day in AI.
All right. So you do it as a business, or is it a kind of something that you do at your free time?
That's a great question. I started off as a consultant around 33. I used to do agency work full time. Then, when I got kind of bored with being laid off when money runs thin from agencies, I said, I think I could do this independently. So I became a consultant, and I've been consulting ever since. But only about a year ago, I went ahead and just opened up my business, a full LLC that I've incorporated.
That's interesting. So how has the experience been for you now that you have been doing it for over a year?
It's growing in pain. It's painfully hard to realize you have to get funding. You have to, potentially show a bank, improve to a bank you have a line of, equity that they could definitely invest in, showing them your, business model, showing them your business plan, what you see as far as forecasting, revenue models. And that's kind of the stage I'm at now. So you're meeting me today where I'm actually going to be seeing banks for the rest of the week, trying to raise some capital. But the consulting teams I work with or consulting other businesses are also raising capital for themselves, which pays me a good, nice amount. I'll say that.
So this bank that you are meeting, what are they really asking from you? I mean, how did they see value in what you are doing, and what do you tell them to get them to see the value in you?
Yes, that's a great question. So I had to explain to them that what's my locale, what's my demographic, and what is my business model? Where does it fit into that demographic? And I'm in the Bronx, New York now, okay? And the Bronx, New York is large. So I don't really have to tell them I want to do a worldwide model. I can just focus on the Bronx as my business place to establish. And in the Bronx itself, I have to show them that there's very few competitors. So, my research and development team has come back to me saying, in the Bronx, there are only about 5 competitors in the Bronx that are doing something similar to what I'm doing. And they've only been active for a year because this field is so new. It's like getting in on the ground floor of something that will eventually be saturated. So I'm showing them that I'm coming into a market that's worth $2.4 million a year, and that I actually would own that $2.4 million. That's a slice of what is available if I were to get, a certain level of clientele. So I showed them if I was to reach 20 clients that are constantly paying me, I would reach a market cap of about 2.4 just using the Bronx as a median to start with in about 2 years. So if I were to take that outside of the Bronx and scale it to the other boroughs in New York, it's still a multi-million business just turning over and over again. And that's what they'll want to see. That's what they'll want to see.
You meet this is to the financier, to the possible funders of the project, no? People who will put money, correct?
Correct. For the banker who sees it as a good, safe business, small business loan.
What about the user? Have you ever had the chance to be able to, because now before you were saying that you could tell somebody that is maybe a business, yeah, okay, you spend maybe 10 or 15 hours to do this. I can make you to spend like 2 or 3 hours to do it. So I'm going to save you time, which is equal to the money that you're going to make at the end of the day, because the money that they're not spending, you are keeping it to yourself. So I'm trying to understand, how do you say this to the user who is maybe going to be in front of the computer or their smartphone to leverage the AI application that you're developing for them?
So we basically do a free audit. I think everything has to be shown before it can be just sold. I know that eventually, if you have a name brand, you can just sell off your name brand. But at this moment in time, you have to do something that shows them the value they're missing. So in a free audit, you can sign up with that on my website. You can just scan my QR code. You get scheduled a 15-minute consultation with me where I'll actually prove to you in about 2 or 3 hours of work a small demo of your front end application that you might need, or the redesign of your website that you might need. And from there, we can discover, is this a viable product for you or not?
Let's say there is somebody who doesn't yet see value in this. And because the person can say, okay, well, there are a lot of applications out there. Of course, this is what people usually say because they don't know what is actually happening, because they hear that there is chat GTP, they hear that there is AI, but they don't really know what is behind it. They don't really know how it works. So, okay, then why are you bringing me another application that is AI, that is already chat GTP? Maybe these people, they never even use it. They don't know what it is, but they're going to throw out all sort of argument out there. What do you
Yes,
say to
yes.
them?
I say, that's understandable. I think I've even come from a person who was a little weary of AI back in the year, let's say 2012. Okay, no, let's go back all the way to 2000. Okay, I was working at the State Department in the year 2000, and if anybody remembers, they called it the Y2K bug. Okay, and for months and months and months on in, I was a summer intern at the State Department. Everybody was panicking. All our computers are gonna crash. Everything's gonna go down. Planes are gonna fall out the sky. A, B, C, D, E, F, and they had so many things that were going to happen. And I'm sitting there looking at the code myself. It was written in Cobalt. Everything that they thought would die was written in Cobalt. And it was just because they had placeholders where the year 2000 wouldn't have the 20 in front of 00. So if all computers read 00, they thought, oh, that'll destroy things. No, the computers just failed silently that couldn't handle it. The stuff that did get patched worked just fine. And that's kind of the thing that I think AI built up in people was we had a lot of movies that kept feeding us, this information that AI would be dangerous in. And there are real dangers, but believe me, it's not the ones that we have in our head. It's not about losing your skills. It's not about being less valuable. It's not about not needing to get more skills. It's more about being aware of why you need to move fast and before everybody else beats you there, because once they beat you there and you realize you're stuck having to come back and backtrack and learn it, you will be like several of my clients who thank me now that I got them started on ChatGPT about 3 or 4 years ago, and now that they're ready to advance, they're almost, it's almost like a baby who now was walking and now is ready to run. Because most people, it's going to take them 2 years to get used to it. So I say, that's what I'd say to convince somebody is don't be that Y2K conspiracy person. Go ahead and give it a shot for yourself, because you'll take 2 years just to get back up to speed.
I remember those story, those Y2K or the. I don't know. I've never been scared of those story. Because it just doesn't make sense to me. It's even like today now we talk about AI, Chat GTP, and the rest of it. Many people are speculating that it have come to the end of humanity. It's because you're going to be able to do this and do that and do that and do that. Oh, everything is going to be. We're going to lose job. Those things never worry me. Why it never worry me? I just look at it like a tool, because we've been developing tool for thousands of years. You see, the pyramid is built with tools. The road is built with tools. We fly, we develop aeroplane with tools. Even the aeroplane itself is a tool, because they help to move you from one place to the other. We have AI. AI is a tool, but I also say that because you don't think enough, that is why you believe that this is the end of it. I want you to multiply where we are today with another 1,000 years from now. And I want you to, from that moment, think back to where we are today. You will laugh that what we see as AI today is a child's play. Because we will be so advanced, we will be able to do many things. Because all these things that we will have 2,000 years from now is still two.
Yes.
So I want people to understand that.
Yes.
That we don't have any reason to be scared. Okay. Are we scared of the knife? Of course, knife is dangerous because it can cut you. The gun is dangerous because it can kill you. But are we going to throw away knife now? Are we going to throw away the guns? So I don't know if I'm just over optimistic about the future.
I love it. I love it how you just described it to me, because we call it, if I get technical, everything's a tool, right? I'll go back to, you see this banner behind me? That had to be made on a loom, right? That means somebody had to weave it. Now imagine back in the days before we had the actual punch card loom, where you could just give it a design. People had to remember the pattern in their head, and then they had to weave and keep weaving. Now what they did was they created this thing called the jacquard loom. And that allowed you to put in a pattern design, and the weaving machine would just weave the pattern. So that was the start of like the first computer, if you really think about that, because it was doing computational design just based on a punch card that went into a machine. Now, people didn't throw their hands up in the air and go, "Oh my God, we can't use that. Nobody's gonna ever make money making textiles anymore because we have these great machines now that are helping us speed up our process and make more." So yes, you cannot stop a tool from helping you get better.
For the skeptics out there, don't be scared. It means that you
Yes.
just have to use. So you need to use your mind now and say, what can I do with the new tool in town? Because in about 15 years from now, 20 years from now, more tools will come. In fact, maybe it's going to be an improvement of the AI or a different tool, completely different from AI. We will still be
Yes.
here because it will help us to improve our life. You see, there are a lot
Yes.
of problems that we have in this world that we need to be able to solve. You see, humanity is still in an infant stage because here we still kill each other because you have the color of your skin is different from me. That is to tell you how infant we are. We need to be able to understand that that is not the case. You see, there are still people that are dying of hunger. A whole human being is reduced to corpse because he cannot see food to eat. Whereas there are a lot of food that is wasted in the world. We need tools to do that. So we are not, there is no reason to be scared. We need more tools to make our life more pleasurable, to make our life more worthy of living, so that we don't need to queue up in a train where everybody is suffocating. We can reinvent our transportation. We can reinvent our communication. We can reinvent how we plant. We can reinvent how we harvest, how we process the food. All this cannot happen if we don't need to, if we don't have tools. So we need tools, more advanced tools, far more advanced than AI. So don't
Yes.
be scared. Don't worry. We will overcome all the challenges.
Absolutely. Humanity's been resilient all this time. Do we think something we invent will let it take us out? No, 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 guys, no. We're not that slow, and we're blessed to have this amazing DNA, as human beings, our brains are in fact, I'll start with our DNA. Our DNA can store more information than any hard drive on this planet. So a human cannot even invent the hardware that the universe invented, right? So if we're not there yet, we really have to look at why would you avoid speeding up your life? Why would you avoid getting back time to work with your kids, to play with your family? Why would you avoid these situations? Because you're going to say, oh, well, if I use AI, then, I'm just causing more pollution. The data centers are bad. I mean, you can name up so many things. I wanted to talk about the negatives of AI, but I think we'll put it just there. What's happening there. But with what you do with your life and your quality of life is guaranteed to change. If you really pick up an AI today, you're going to see why there's going to be multimillionaires in their teens
Yeah.
coming up very soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Now, let's learn more about you. That is a phrase that we call the before. Here we use NBA, now, before, and after. So we learn about what you do now, Dennis. So tell me a bit about you as you were growing up. Okay, we know that you already talked about that, no? But we're still interested in learning more. What is influencing you as a little child, as a boy growing up?
Oh, for me, it was definitely cartoons and video games. That's my biggest influence growing up because I lived in Japan and we had the best toys. I'll take it back to 1981. I had the Transformer collection before it was bought by Hasbro in America and rebranded as Transformers. In Japan, they were just transforming robots, and they were amazingly, intricate puzzle toys. You got to put together, take apart, put the truck into a robot, a plane into a robot, and this made my mind so inquisitive. I have a deep yearning for curiosity. So I wanted to take my toys apart even and like unscrew them, see where the joints and everything connected, and put them back together, and maybe even mix match pieces of my toys. So I was a tinkerer, of toys. And then Saturday morning cartoons were different in Japan as well. We got to see, almost cartoons that were more like adult stories, romance driven, was Robotech. Robotech really showed us a lot of like, male and female struggles of, sometimes you like a girl, but this girl doesn't like you, but this other girl really likes you and you should go for her because she's actually, really that's the kind of lady to go for. So I got a lot of influence from cartoons and stuff like that, that as I grew up out of the 80s or into the 80s, I started, my own comic book. A buddy of mine and I were good at drawing. So he had his own comic character. I had my own comic character. And we would, enter into contests and we'd win. So I was winning a lot of drawing contests and comic book contests by like the second and third grade. It had led me to continue that when I got to my computer. I would be like, how do I draw in this computer? All you had was a mouse back then. But I tried as hard as I could every day to redo my characters in computer, and it wasn't working at first. It was terrible, way worse. But eventually I got good at it and said, I think I could actually animate my characters here, right? So, I began, learning what animation was, but never really had the computer strong enough at home that could let me explore that until I went to college. So when I started exploring animation in college again, a software came out called Shockwave by Macromedia, and eventually it was called Flash. But Flash did vector animations. I said, oh my God, I've arrived. So I began taking all of my older skill sets that I had in middle school, high school, and now applying them to drawing inside the computer and animating things. And next thing I said to myself, oh, this is a career. Why am I going to waste my time with my interests are, truth be told, animation, music, and computers. And I'll put it like this is the year 1996. And I went ahead and I followed through with college, Meanwhile, college wasn't teaching me anything new. I'm not going to lie to you. I could open up a book in the library, go to the appendix, look up what I needed, get that information, highlight it, take a photo, go home. And the professor was never going to talk about that specific stuff I went to go research on my own. So I realized, you can always be your own self-best teacher. So I kind of started my own company at that point at 19. So when I get back from my freshman year, I tell all my friends, hey, I can offer you guys websites with animation now. They're like, oh my gosh, how much? So my friend's father, who's a pastor, signed up for being my first client. I gave them a beautiful website. I did all the animations on the website custom, and it looked very expensive, and I'm only 19 years old. I charged him $100, just getting started. But after that, he asked me for maintenance. And I was like, wow, I get maintenance on this website too? Okay, I get it now. This is a career path,
That is a recurring revenue now.
Absolutely. So, the green started to make sense to me. And next thing I knew, I had 5 or 10 clients and I was making, $800 in the summertime when my other friends were, and this is $800 extra dollars. My other friends were still cutting grass or, working at a bodega or shop. And now I'm sitting at home. And that was, I think, where I first started to spoil myself, realizing I could sit at home and make money. I just need to make sure that I have up-to-date knowledge, and never fall behind.
Oh,
So that's kind of how it all started for me, man.
thank you so much for that. Did you have some curiosity as you were growing up, as you maybe in your little teenage years now, growing up in Japan? You didn't even tell us where in Japan did you grow up. But maybe that can help some other persons to connect. We're doing storytelling. It appears that we are talking about ourselves, but we're actually talking about people. Because you made mention of a place, somebody else is triggered to say, okay, if you talk about your age, somebody else is triggered. Okay, I was also like that age. What did I do in my own age? So you think you are helping yourself, but you're also helping somebody.
I'll do a deep dive. That's my deep dive animation.
Let's go.
I said I'm an animator. Okinawa, Japan, 1980. I'd only been there for 4 or 5 months. I'm 3 going on 4. And my parents are very, very trusting because we live on a military base with letting me just be outside. And I remember going to the backyard of the barracks building, and we had this really tall, winding hill that you could, go up and run down as a kid, tumble down. So a lot of the kids would congregate out behind this hill and play together. I took this time to collect bugs. I took this time to look at insects and butterflies and got a butterfly net. I took this time to, look at the praying mantis and how its head kind of turned and these creepy eyes, but it didn't creep me out, The grasshoppers were very, just the same. I was like, thinking of Jiminy Cricket from Pinocchio, and like I was like, okay, so I guess when they rub their legs together, that's how they make the sound. I was wrong. Of course, it's their thorax when they're back, but that's how a kid was thinking. I was like, yes, just like shake their legs, they're gonna make the sound. And that's where I was playing around for hours upon hours in the sun, just enjoying the nature of Japan. We went to botanical gardens in Japan. And I'm telling you, to this day, I've never seen a botanical garden like I've seen from Japan, because they have such a great ecology there. The flowers, so perfumey, pink, blues, and all the same species, but just in different colors. So, the gardening and everything in Japan is just so pristine that I can tell you, I kind of miss it to this day. You're making me visualize it all again. That, I say to myself, when I do have a chance, I'll revisit Okinawa. Because Okinawa is where they filmed Karate Kid, by the way. And it's because that's where the last battle of World War II, the ground war, happened. So a lot of soldiers were stationed there, and to this day still are. So imagine now, though, Japan, it still has all its culture on that island. And on that hill I was just describing to you behind me, once I got old enough and I got up my first bike, my friend Michael and I rode our bikes around this neighborhood now and went up that hill, because it actually had a road that you could follow. And we rode up this hill that was so steep. I'm telling you, we got off our bikes to walk the rest of our bike up the hill, because it might have been like a 4-mile hike up this hill to a Buddhist monastery or temple. So ornate, so beautiful. Once we got to the temple, that we were kind of scared that we might not be allowed to be up there, But I recall, out front had the natural structures that you usually see in front of a Buddhist temple, with the pagoda roofing, and then the two dogs that sit with their paw on a ball on each side of the stairway that comes up to the big door, right? I mean, a big 9-foot door, probably made of like a brown red painted wood. But we wanted to go open it. I dared him to go open it. He goes out to the door and he just runs back. And he scares me so bad that I get on my bike. He gets up and we just run down the hill. We didn't even attempt to mess with the people there. But that was a great temple, because every day at noon they played this tune from their bells that made everybody in the area aware they were there. And it was so beautiful. It kind of set the mood for the area. And it's now my heart's beating a little bit, because those were the days, growing up in Japan. I have fonder memories of any other place I've ever lived, even America. I mean, and then the culture of Japanese are just so caring. Whenever we went to eat at restaurants, we're blacks. There's only maybe one of us or two of us on that island at a time. So to have a whole family there was amazing for Japanese people. They would ask, us if we were out eating, could we do some karaoke for them? I remember one waitress comes to our table while I'm sitting next to my father, my sister, and my mom. And she says to my dad, "Hey, can your son come do Michael Jackson for us?"
Michael Jackson 5, the Justice 5.
So to not, that's not prejudice. That's just their culture. That's how friendly they are. That they knew they had the chance maybe to get a good show. So that's all they were asking for. That's all they were asking.
That's lovely. So your family actually moved there, or was it any part of your family that was originally connected to the Japanese by heritage or anything like that?
No. This was my father's first assignment overseas. I was 3. My sister was born that year that we were moving, and this was his first assignment to be overseas. He was a officer. He was a lieutenant in the Air Force. He had just graduated from college. He'd only been out of college for 3 years. So as old as I am is how long he had been out of college at this point. So at 3 years old, he'd been 3 years out of college. The Air Force now was commissioning him to move to Japan to help them run the flight lines for the Air Force bases out there. And so he gets out there before we do. I fly out. He comes back to get me. I fly out to Japan. And then my mother, my newborn baby sister, and my mother's grandmother fly out. So it was just a family affair. We didn't have any roots in Japan. But once we were all there, we lived there for four and a half years.
If you were to go back to Japan today, what would you be looking forward to seeing?
I would be looking forward to seeing more of us there because I do know that that has now happened. I pay attention to the diaspora, and the diaspora is not afraid of being African in Japan or Black in Japan now, because we understand their culture. We had to come to the place of understanding that they have ways, and we don't want to bring our American culture there and say, oh no, our way is correct. Where if you're on a date with a Japanese girl, you if she gives you a plate and you leave a crumb on the plate, you don't finish the rice that she gave you, and there's a one piece of rice, she'll think that's you didn't enjoy the meal. She'll really feel offended. So an American would be like, I was just gonna clean it in the dishwasher and just wash it off. I didn't get to that last piece of rice. That's how we think. But their culture is so sensitive that you say to yourself, no, 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 pay attention to all the details. I would be there for that experience of the details, their cleanliness, their neatness. Look, even right now, Japan has been praised because their World Cup soccer team cleaned their own locker room and left the place immaculate, while all the other teams have trash and everything. So it's for me, that's what made me the type of person I am today. I love when things are organized. I love it when things are really laid out and cleanly. So my father and I were just joking about this on Father's Day. To this day, at a restaurant, we stack our plates and our dishes in the middle of the table with the knives and wipe our table down before the busser even comes to the table, because it's a part of our nature now, having lived in Japan and understood cleanliness is next to godliness.
That's a lot. I wish a lot of people will just take that to heart. That's a powerful message. Now, tell me a bit about also, okay, your real heritage now, which is an American, African American, before you even went to Japan, or of course you returned. Tell me about what do you like somebody to know about your your infancy in the United States?
That's a very, very good subject. It's actually a place when I tell my other friends about it, they kind of judge me. So I think your audience will appreciate this. Um, I didn't like American culture when I got back to the United States. I didn't like American football. My friends were always from the first grade. I'm sorry, from the second grade on, talking to me about their favorite football teams, their favorite football stars. And I'm going, what's this football? I'd never seen the American football sport. They're talking to me about the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and their favorite basketball players. And I'm like, I've never seen these sports. I've only grown up in Japan seeing, soccer, where I was a native soccer player. But to be made fun of by American kids because I didn't know what these sports were and what their heroes were, it was weird. It took me a long time to really start to get friends that understood that they could just teach me instead of, trying to make fun of me and make me feel like less than. So I took the time to, my second and third grade year to try to understand these sports and get acclimated into what American television was, what American kids were really like. Because believe me, all of us kids in Japan, we didn't really know. We were transplanted out of America before we had exposure to true American culture. So when you get, that culture shock coming back to America, it's almost like you can have a better mirror for Americans, and say, do they not see what they're doing? That this is like bullying culture, and you guys praise bullies. You look up to bullies. You guys praise, violent culture. I mean, none of this was in my brain until I had to be re-exposed to America. So I remember now, my mom says to me after realizing I'd been teased some years by the third grade, she says, "You need to take karate." I said, "Yes, I will take karate. I would take karate." And here's the funniest part of this story. So I'm taking karate. My dad's already a black belt. He'd been a black belt since he was in high school. But he kept his trophies and all his stuff in the den from his karate exploits, where he would win tournaments and everything. And now that I have my white belt, I'm looking at his trophies and his black belt one morning. We always had show and tell, and and I looked at his black belt and it had my name on it, because if you see my name on the screen is Dennis Day. The second, my father's name is Dennis Day. Nobody's going to know the difference. I grab his black belt and I'm going to take it for show and tell. Okay. And I get to class and it's in my backpack. I pull it out and everybody looks at me like, "Ooh, you're a black belt?" And I'm like, "Shh, shh, 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 shh." I'm trying to make it seem real secretive. Meanwhile, teacher calls me up for my show and tell time, and I show everybody the black belt. And I'm like, this is my black belt. And at that point, every kid in that school respected me and feared me a little bit because they thought I might be able to actually hurt them. That's what it took for me to get out of the bullying of the American kids, was show them a black belt with my name on it. But I was still taking karate, so I didn't feel too crazy. But I did make another true good friend after that, who's like, he was a little taller than me. He was actually a kid who'd been held back, and he wanted to protect me. He's like, I'll be your bodyguard, my guy. So that's really what starts, my life in America, is really having to realize that Americans aren't doing the exact same thing I was hoping we would be doing, which is taking care of each other, nurturing each other, and not, making somebody feel less than. So by the time I get to, out of elementary school, I'm fully acclimated into the culture, but I still don't like it. I'm still yearning to this day to travel back overseas when I, leave elementary school. In fact, my dad gets to go to Korea when I'm in the sixth grade, and I wasn't allowed to go with him. So I kind of felt a little heartbroken, but he sent me a lot of gifts that, were only available from, the overseas place markets, like the Japanese candies that I used to eat, some of the Japanese toys I used to get. So my dad, being a military guy, I was still getting spoiled because he could send gifts if he got stationed in Korea back home. So it was a bit of a learning experience, man. I'll tell you, I could go into high school and beyond, but I think if I just stopped there at elementary school, you should understand that, American culture isn't really raising kids correctly. And to this day, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse. Okay. I say no, my opinion has not changed, because after I, realized I could teach very well, I started teaching in inner cities. When I left college, I moved up here to New York in the northern tri-state area from Virginia. I went to Virginia Tech for college, but I moved up here and I started working with inner city kids. And I could easily identify the inner city kid that was very intelligent like I was, but that was just bullied and made fun of for being intelligent. Because if you are the book nerd who always raises their hand in class, people turn around at you like, don't answer the question. So I would identify those type of kids that were feeling that pressure to not be as intelligent as they could be. I'd take them into my computer after school program, and I'd get them that confidence back, because I felt like, they too just needed that person that was going to be like, I have your back. I want you to succeed. I want you to, take your intelligence to the next level. So there were several kids that, to this day, I, gave them, I would say, that jump start to their computer career by just sitting them in a computer lab and showing them that we could take some of their favorite old video games, right? From, let's say, Mario Brothers to a go-kart racing game. And we could take what's called an emulator and install an emulator on the computer, and then have emulated games from the 80s that were no longer available. And once kids saw that, now they're introduced to what I call hackers culture, a culture of, freedom of thought, not feeling like the computer is boxing you in. And that also would give them the confidence when they go back out to class to have that ability to, ask them the harder question now that they were afraid to ask. Because in my class, there was no such thing as a dumb question. I asked everybody to say, hey, why does my mouse need to be double clicked? And I'm like, okay, that's a very good question. Not too many kids want to know. Ask why you have to double click a mouse. I'm like, the first execution is the single click. That's how you drag things. But if you double click, you're sending a message to the computer to execute. And once you teach that kind of stuff to kids, then their curiosity can continue flourishing, So I know American culture to this day, because I'm still doing the same thing. I'm teaching inner city kids about AI now. And let's take, for example, a kid named Marcus, who is 14 years old, and he lives in this neighborhood where his grandmother is his caretaker. She's the only one he has left in his family. But he has to go, instead of coming to after school programs, he's got to go work at a bodega part-time as like a bus guy, busing the vegetables up to the freezer and things like that. That he doesn't have time to sit in this class anymore. And I'm afraid that on paper he's going to look like a failure, because AI is now evaluating kids based on certain metrics, their zip codes, their test scores and things like that, that he could be flagged as a high risk kid, where just a year ago he was able to flourish until he had to go get a job, and his scores have gone down and things like that. So it's really, funny, because he also has expressed that he wants to be a computer scientist. So at that young of an age, he's not going to have a lot of friends that would be down the same path. He's one in a million. But to get that one in a million child, to have that courage to come back to the computer lab one day, is what I'm, really focused on when it comes to American children these days. Getting them to stick to AI, come back to the computer lab.
Thank you so much for that. Now, tell me, what is your biggest satisfaction in all of this work that you do?
Biggest satisfaction, Obehi. That's a hard one. See, you finally got me. You were trying all this time to get me. I can't. Biggest satisfaction. I can't put a word to one satisfaction. I could probably give you a flow chart that trickles down. When I wake up in the morning and I take that first breath and I see the sunshine, I know I'm here to do my purpose, right? So my first thing is purpose, right? If I'm not living in my purpose, I won't be satisfied. And in my purpose, I wake up going, okay, now that I'm awake, who am I going to influence today? And in a way that when the influence is done, that person will always remember just a couple of words I've said. And with that couple of words, they might call me, 20 years from now, 5 years from now, 2 years from now. Thank you. That's all I needed to go to that next level. So I'd say it's the little things that get me going, that when it's returned back to me in just a simple thank you, that's what really, shows me that I'm actually, achieving something that doesn't have to be monetary. It just has to be something human connection. And my father taught me that. My father tutored a lot of my friends in high school, believe it or not. He didn't have to tutor me, but he tutored a lot of my friends, where to this day, when I run into them, they're like, thank your father, man. I love your father, man. He helped me out so much. And I said, wow, I'm proud of that man. And I'm pretty sure he's proud of me too, because I'm just following up in his kind of footsteps and just passing down, good information to the youth.
Now, as an expert in AI, I'd like to share something with you. I don't know if that, because I really think maybe you can have an opinion on that. Now, let me share a little bit of story around it. That is the Sovereign Oracle that we have created. It's built up of over 10,000 documents that we have created over the years for over 14 years of research about Africa and African diaspora. It started as, I think I already shared a bit of it with you during the pre-interview, that I wanted to learn more about the story of Africans in Northern Italy, and that is what actually led to this project, where we have done more than 1,000 interviews, talking to people around Africa descent in different parts of the world. So now we put all of that together into what we call the Sovereign Oracle. I would like you to ask it a question, and then we will see the result, and you will be the judge. Either there's anything wrong, you can point it out. Either there's anything that we can improve, you can point it out.
Can you identify where African Americans are being judged biasly in school? Yes, that's great.
That's the question.
Yes, I do see the response, and I have to get very close to my screen or zoom up a little bit. So it says African Americans face bias in schooling through multiple systemic and interpersonal channels that affect their educational experience and outcomes. This bias is often subtle, but deeply embedded in structural policies and daily interactions within schools, leading to unequal treatment and opportunities compared to their peers. Spot on. That's the first sentence that, I teach in my class for this coming up about AI biases. African American students encounter bias that manifest in disciplinary actions. That's number one. African Americans are over disciplined compared to their peers. If a kid here in America in a school that's mixed cultures happens to let's say step on another kid's toe, and it was totally accident, but the other kid gets mad at them and a fight ensues. The kid who stepped on that kid's toe is probably going to get suspended, and the other kid that helped start the fight, they're probably going to get suspended. But they're just two black kids who had an altercation, and if the white kids do that, no, they're not going to get suspended for that. So now those two black kids are out of school for 2 days, and the cycle continues where we're judged a little harshly with disciplinary stuff. And, then it reads on, it says, and then the academic expectations and the resource allocation. These biases create barriers to their full educational potential and contribute to persistent achievement gaps. Yes.
All right. So yeah, that was just one question. Of course, we could go on to ask another question. I really wanted to ask your opinion on that. Okay. Oh, this is part of the response also. What do you mean by digital tenancy? We put it there.
That's a great question.
Okay.
Yes, because I'm not familiar with that word.
Okay.
It's tenacity, right? Oh, yes, digital tenacity. But yeah, I've never heard it said that way.
Well, no, we usually actually use that word
Oh,
tenancy.
Tennessee. Oh, it's
Okay, okay,
Tennessee. Okay. I'm just having a hard time seeing. What is
okay.
Tennessee? What is Tennessee again?
It's gonna explain just now. Let's see what the oracle say about it. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes, I can. Digital Tennessee traps many professionals and business owners in a cycle of dependency that stifles true growth and sovereignty. It is a critical operational constraint because it prevents you from building lasting, scalable systems that you fully own and control. Recognizing this condition is the first step toward breaking free and establishing permanent ownership of your own digital legacy. That's beautifully said. I need that wording. I'll continue reading too, because this is impressive. It says so dependency on external platforms. When your business or personal brand relies on rented, digital spaces like social media, marketplaces, or cloud services, you are subject to their changing rules, their fees and algorithms, which can abruptly affect your reach and revenue. So the lack of data and infrastructure control. Without owning our data infrastructure, you cannot fully protect your information or customize your systems for optimal performance, leaving you vulnerable to outages, censorships, or data loss. So limited scalability and legacy building. The digital tenancy restricts your ability to synthesize and automate your operation at scale, preventing you from creating a sustainable legacy that passes on wealth and knowledge to future generations. That's my company dabbling. That's what we're doing. What it just described is how I built my AI in my machine. I built my AI in my machine. No one owns my AI. I can use the third party vendors just as much as I need to, from ChatGPT to Claude to Grok to DeepSeek, the Asian ones. But at the end of the day, if all of those companies were to go under today, I could still sit at my computer and use a locally trained AI that I'm working on because I want to own my own data. And that's what I pass on to the clients I work with, is that they will, after they finish working with me, own their data. It will not be on the cloud where it's another company trading off of you and getting more money off of you.
Thank you so much for that. That is what I wanted to learn. Anyway, as an expert in the AI, I wanted to assess the. So, what do you say about the quality of the output that you see from the Sovereign Oracle? Like I said, you see an MVP. We are still currently working on it, but it's open for public to see.
I think that's a very great start. I have maybe one other example of what you're doing called Latimere. You can check it out. But your tool, being that you started it based off of training data correctly, you're going to have a tool that is more valuable to the African community because it's trained to kind of recognize the way they talk, the way they write. All the other AIs have been training off of white Americans. I mean, let's just be so honest. So if that's the case, eventually you'll need your own large language models and your own tensors that you've trained with that information as well, because the frontier of AI at this moment, like you said, it could change in 15 years, but the frontier at this moment is the LLM and it's training tensor data. And tensoring is probably, they call it grokking when you move information in and out of a tensor. And the tensor is basically just a set of chips sitting in a data center, high quality chips, of course. You're getting these weights put into the tensor that will be biased or non-biased based on who's training it. So to train our own, data, our own tensors with an AI that you're doing there is probably going to explode, pretty soon. Where people will be looking for more culturally trained AIs, and that will be a huge market.
Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. Of course, we're going to have time to be able to talk about this after we finish the recording, or maybe on another occasion, of course. So yeah, I really appreciate you coming on the podcast to share your point here, and we have learned about you. So yeah, it's really I've been an honor to learn about your experiences, being in Japan, being in the United States, your experiences, what you are working on within AI, and also with among young people. It really has been full of value. So I really want to thank you so much for it.
Hey, it's my pleasure, Obi.
Thank you so
In
much.
fact, in fact, thank you for sharing that tool. I will be utilizing that tool as well, moving
Please.
forward, and posting it as much as I can on LinkedIn. I have another tool that's similar, not similar, no, not even, but it's called learn.dablin.com, and it's meant for the underprivileged student right now, like I named Marcus, who can't come to my computer classes anymore. I'm giving him a tool now that he can still get great tutoring. It's learn.dablin.com, and it's going to generate him a course. If he wants to learn Python coding, he types in "teach me Python coding," and he'll get a course made in about 1 minute, 1 or 2 minutes, that is tailored to his skill level.
Thank you so much for that. And as you continue to use it, please do let us know also your feedback. Those are important for us as we move forward to in the next frontier.